Joining me right now is former New York City mayor and personal attorney for President Trump, Rudy Giuliani. Rudy, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being back with me this morning.
Pleasure to see you, Maria.
So what do you make of this? Anarchistic jurisdictions that will obviously threaten federal funding going to New York, while Mayor de Blasio says he needs $9 billion yesterday to fill the budget hole.
Yeah, that's because he's wasted probably way more than $9 billion. I mean, he's been, as you know, Maria, and everybody in New York knows this, Democrat, Republican. He has clearly been the worst mayor in the history of the city. I can't tell you how bad he is, how many things he's done wrong. But it is clear this is an anarchist city because all you need to prove it are the videos of the riots that took place and the fact that the police stood and watched the rioters. You know the New York City Police Department wouldn't do that unless they were ordered to do that. And I believe if you ever held a trial, you could call police commanders who would testify that the mayor personally called them and told them to stand down. I don't even know if that makes him an accessory to robbery. I mean, the man is, I cannot, and I won't because people think I'm crazy. The man is, without doubt, a terrible mayor. He's a danger. He actually, people die as a result of his incompetence. It kind of explains to us the importance of public office. And if you make a terrible mistake, public office is so important, mayor, governor, president, people will die. More people died in this pandemic than had to because he never used a 1,000 ship, wonderful boat that the president sent here, one that I used a great deal during September 11th. And the governor, too. Wow. The governor sent people into nursing homes. He had there was 1,000 empty beds sitting in a beautiful place in the Hudson River on a ship that's been used 100 times with very, very good doctors on it. And these incompetents, I don't know if it's politics. They didn't want to make Trump look good.
Well, in fact, he was out painting the streets, Black Lives Matter, in big yellow letters outside of Trump Tower. Do you believe that his actions have, in fact, sort of sparked up things and allowed the rioting to blossom?
Yeah. I believe his targeting of the police has led to police officers getting shot. I think it goes back to when he was first mayor. I mean, he ran against the police department. He demonized him. That's how he got elected. He did the whole stop and frisk thing way beyond how it had to be done. He actually said that the New York City Police Department was racist. And then a man from Baltimore, at about that time, chose to come to New York to kill a police officer. Why do you think that man chose New York? He could have gone to Philadelphia, could have gone to Boston, he could have stayed in Baltimore. But our mayor announces that he's very worried about our police department. He tells his son to worry about our police department. And, of course, it is a pretty famous police department. So you're putting a target on their back. And then when this whole situation first began, he started talking about how we have problems and the police didn't act properly. And when police officers hear that, they say to themselves, and this is more than an expression. This goes into the psyche of a police officer. The mayor doesn't have my back. If I go a little too far, and I get into a difficult situation, he's going to turn and he's going to point the finger at me. They have to know. Police officers, the military has to know. The president has their back.
Yeah.
The police have to know the mayor has their back. And this comes from somebody who reduced crime more than any other mayor in any city ever in history. Nobody's ever reduced crime by 65%. I did it. I know how to do it. I know what I'm talking about. This mayor should have been gone at the beginning of COVID. Governor Cuomo knows everything I know.
How do you do it, Rudy? What do you think needs to happen in New York to stop the madness and to stop people from leaving New York? What are your top 3 things that need to be done now?
One's real simple. Tell the police department they're allowed to do their job. Tell them they can actually make arrests. And if they make a little mistake, if they get a little too rough, because things get rough and tough when you make an arrest, you're not arresting nice people. You're going to back them. You tell the district attorneys you're going to defund them if they release people. I mean, we got an idiot district attorney in Manhattan who let all the rioters go. We got Soros district attorneys all around the country doing that. They should be thrown out of office. They should be impeached. You don't just let 100 rioters out. You don't let 1,000 rioters out. They should. The governor of the state should supersede the district attorney, any district attorney who does that. If I were the governor of New York right now, I would throw de Blasio
how about
out.
Just criminals.
Oh,
Rudy, come on!
I haven't even talked about
Governor
that.
Cuomo in March, and he said he's going to have a solution for the bail reform, the absence of cash bail by April. He never came back to tell me what that solution is. And the shooting numbers and the crime numbers have only gone up. You're talking about letting the rioters out. You've got criminals out because of the elimination of cash bail. And Kamala Harris says she wants to do that in all of America. No cash bail should she become vice president.
Well, did it ever occur to you, Maria, that one of the reasons they encourage this violence is because they want to blame it on President Trump? Joe Biden directly blames it on President Trump. Of course, the president has nothing to do with local law enforcement. It wasn't Bill Clinton's fault if crime went up in New York. It was mine. And Bill Clinton didn't take crime down in New York. I did, because other mayors got the same help that I did and couldn't do it. So law enforcement is a local matter. It's a completely dishonest thing to say, but I believe they want to keep the pandemic going. They want to keep the schools closed. Biden blames him for the schools being closed. So go look at what Biden is blaming him for, and the crooked Democratic politicians who don't really care about anybody. Imagine talking about impeachment right now. Haven't they revealed that from the very beginning all the impeachments were phony? They're going to impeach him for exercising the power.
Well, I'll tell you, it's really a sad state of affairs. Before
Jimmy
I
Carter,
came to Fox and started broadening out my own coverage and understanding politics in Washington better, I had no idea the corruption that existed. I mean, just looking at what took place in 2016 and the dirty tricks to try to take down President Trump is just extraordinary. Even the idea of Russia collusion, we know that Russia is trying to meddle in our elections, has been for decades. Same thing with China and same thing with Iran. I just spoke with the national, the head of intelligence, the director of intelligence, John Ratcliffe, and he told me that he presented a report to the Congress explaining specifics about Russia, China, and Iran trying to meddle in our elections. What came out as a result of that? Russia, 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 Russia. They just keep pushing this narrative that Russia is undermining, and they're also bringing you down with it. You know that. They're trying to attack you in terms of your relationships in Russia as a result of this. No mention of China, no mention of Iran. Russia's economy is the size of Texas. China is much bigger of a threat. Yeah.
Yes. And I'll tell you why they don't go after China. Because China owns the Democratic Party. They gave the Biden family, I don't know, 20 million, 30 million. The Biden kid is involved in China business right now, today. And we're going to elect this guy president of the United States when his son has been pulling down millions in China? That's totally ridiculous. Well, China owns Joe Biden. They've owned him since his son went there and started making millions. And Joe took him on Air Force 2 there. Why do you think Joe says things like China's no competition? I mean, he has said very many ignorant things. But he can't be that demented and that stupid to say that there is nobody in the world that agrees with that. He says it because
we're waiting on Senator
if he ever
Ron
goes
Johnson's
against China, they'll sue him for his money back.
We're waiting for the Senate report
like
from Ron Johnson on Burisma. What are we going to learn about Hunter Biden in Ukraine from this report?
But what you're going to learn is that there was no way that Zlochevsky, the crooked oligarch, who paid the Biden family somewhere between 8 and 14 million, was paying for a drug addict, which is what this guy has been. This guy can't function. I don't think he ever showed up in Ukraine. It was a no-show job. So what was the no-show job for? Joe's influence. He was the most influential man in Ukraine. He had been put there by Obama. He was giving out all the money. Zlochevsky needed him in order to save his company, and then Biden went ahead and did it, and he bribed Poroshenko. It's on tape. There are 5 witnesses, and there are four recordings of conversations just at the time that the firing took place that have not been released. 4 recordings that will amount to about 2.5 hours of conversations between Biden and Poroshenko. Right. They're all in February of 2016. Those should be released by President Trump. President Trump should declassify them and put them out. I will bet you.
I don't know if we'll get.
Dinner,
I don't know if we'll get these.
He goes under if they come out.
I know that. Yeah, go ahead. I know that Senator Ron Johnson has been asking for documents about this. Yep.
He can't get those. He's trying hard to get them.
Yeah.
4 conversations right in the middle of the bribe.
Okay, Rudy, we'll check on that. It's great to see you this morning, sir. Thank you so much, Rudy Giuliani.